You do not need to take furious notes. We will record this and send this out to ninth grade parents in the coming days. But good evening, first and foremost, and welcome to our grade 9 college counseling and academic planning program. My name is Ross Mancuda, for those of you I don't know, and I am just one of a team of 5 in our office. You will hear from 3 of my colleagues over the course of the evening, and we also want to introduce our colleague Zoya Fatima, who is the assistant in our office. So welcome to our grade 9 parent night. It is our main goal while we're with you tonight to make some introductions, both to ourselves and to our program. We hope that your ninth graders have had a great transition to high school, whether they come from our own middle school or elsewhere. Our role as academic planners is one that we take very seriously and serves as an opportunity for us to really help guide and shape our students' Milken experiences. It's absolutely our goal this evening to maintain a level of calm and comfort. We are not here to fast forward your kids' adolescence, nor to add anxiety, stress onto your plate. In many ways, we can only accomplish a strong relationship with you all if we develop a relationship based on trust. Over the next hour, you will hear from our entire counseling team, a team that is passionate about the work that we do. Our office has over 25 years of college counseling experience, significant college admission experience at 5 unique institutions, and most importantly, a genuine goal of doing the best we can for each one of our students. I'll be the first to tell you that this last point is what matters most. What matters is our investment in the lives of your children. Our office has the dual roles as academic planners and college counselors because our singular goal is your children's success. And to be frank, we may not value success in the same way that you do. And I want to be upfront about that tonight. For us, success in our students is their finding self-confidence, self-awareness, drive, motivation, passion, and purpose. For us, whether college is the next step for your sons and daughters is not the point. We are here to help guide them on whatever path they choose. So, while you will not hear my colleagues and I stand up here tonight and speak about specific colleges and what it takes to get into school X or school Y, know that everything we speak about is framed by our knowledge of the field, its nuances, its inconsistencies, its unpredictability, and its excitement. My colleagues will speak about your children's academic journey, their social maturation, and an outlook for their remaining time at Milken. Before I turn it over to them, I want to spend some time as we get started sharing with you our philosophy. For starters, I want to ensure that everyone knows that we've already met with every ninth grader during advisory visits that we conducted in November. It's also worth noting that this event for grade 9 parents has always traditionally been held in February. This year, we decided to make the event coincide with when we meet with your students. Since we shared our message and philosophy with them, we thought it appropriate that you heard from us around the same time. Getting back to our advisory visits from last month, during these visits, we introduced ourselves and our roles at Milken, but also spoke about building relationships with faculty, getting involved in extracurricular activities, both in and out of Milken, and most importantly, the idea that ninth grade counts. Our visits intentionally took place after first quarter ended so that your children had a sense of their initial performance in class. My colleagues and I meet far too many students in their junior and senior years who reflect back on ninth grade with regret and disappointment. We laid the groundwork in November and will do so in our upcoming interactions with your kids, that the effort and work they put in now will impact their high school experience and beyond. Secondly, we will always stress to you and your children that this is an individualized process because each kid has their own path. Because I've been at Milken so long, I now work with many siblings of students who have graduated. I stress in every one of these new interactions that these new bonds are just that, new. My new relationships with all of my younger students are ones that will be built from scratch as I get to know each student individually. Our team values this individualized approach as it allows us to help your sons and daughters navigate their time here and consider what options may lie beyond their graduation. Lastly, it's important to note that we met with advisories completely randomly in the fall. And when we go back into advisories in the spring, those visits will be random as well. Each of your students will have an academic planning meeting with one of us in April or May. And again, those meetings are scheduled in a total random fashion. The counselors that your kids met in the fall and will meet in the coming months will not necessarily be their college counselors moving forward. Counselors are assigned in the fall of 10th grade based on equity among the four of us in terms of gender, GPA distribution, as well as input from different administrators so that we can best advise and support our students. We don't take requests, and you will be notified next fall who your college counselor academic planner will be for the duration of your time at Milken. Before I turn it over to my colleague, Sam Schreiber, I want to mention some quick housekeeping notes. First and foremost, thank you very much to Chris Scarlotta, Division Head for the 9th and 10th grade, for joining us today and for being a great partner with our team. Also, you all should be able to use the chat function to communicate with Sam. Feel free to send Sam questions as the night unfolds, and she will collect them for our Q&A section at the end of the evening. Also know that we will likely get to many of your inquiries during the course of the night in our prepared remarks. So again, welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us, and I will now turn it over to Samantha Schreiber.
Sam, you're muted.
So embarrassing. Thank you, Miss Jackson. Hi. So I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek as to what we're going to be talking to your students about when we visit them again in late March. In the fall, when we met with them, like Mr. Mancuda said, it was about 9th grade counting, academic tips, but when we meet with them in March, it's going to be about the academic planning process for 10th grade. And so they will sign up for 30-minute meetings with one of us, again, randomly assigned to one of us, and meet with us later on in the spring. The meeting is only for the student, but you, the parents, will be CC'd on reminders about the meeting so that you know it's coming. You can talk to your student about it. You can make sure they're prepared, and you'll also receive follow-up from us. So while you're going to be getting a lot of communication around it, we do want to meet just one-on-one with the student and let them take ownership over the process. It's really a great opportunity for us to have contact with them, for them to start getting to know us and they're in our office, and for us to start getting to know them, their academic interests, and what their experience has been like at Milken so far, and how we can make sure that 10th grade is meaningful and they're prepared for that. By then, they will have received their course recommendations. As Mr. Mancuda said, that is totally dictated by the parents, by the teachers. And we just go off of what the teachers recommend for students. Of course, if students have questions, if they want to talk through things, that is 100% what we are there for. But anything in terms of questioning what classes they were recommended for, that would be with their faculty members. So I'm going to show you a few documents that we use in academic planning. You may remember this from the 8th grade meetings when they were coming in as 9th graders. You may have blacked that out. So we don't have, this is last year's, and you'll be getting updated ones for this year shortly and an email from Dr. Schwartz. So you'll want to keep an eye out for these updated forms. But what you're looking at now is the grade 10 course request worksheet. This is a worksheet that is multiple pages that I am not going to go through right now with you, but it lists every course available to 10th graders. So what we're going to do when we meet with your 9th graders is instruct them to print out this worksheet, or at least download a copy of it, and talk to you about it in terms of what their recommended courses are and then what electives they want to take, and have that filled out and ready for our meeting with them so that we can have meaningful discussion about those things instead of them looking through and not knowing really what they're looking at. So our hope is that after we meet with them in March, even prior to them, when you receive these updated documents, that you guys have sat down, talked about it, looked at it, and your student comes into their meeting with us really ready to say, this is what I'd like to take. I'm not really sure, what do you recommend? And just with some concrete thought having already been put into it. The next slide is an example of the program of study. So this is one of my favorite documents. It has not just a list of every course offered at Milken, but a description of every course, as well as any prerequisite requirements to take courses. So this is really the academic Bible of Milken. If students see a course on the course request worksheet and they're like, I have no idea what that is, go to the program of study. You can Control F, you can search for that title, and you can see exactly what that course is and a description of it. It's really, really helpful in terms of, figuring out the academic path that your student wants, and also just answering basic questions about what classes am I taking next year, and what sorts of things are going to be covered in them. Their teachers are also great resources in terms of asking about, well, what is next year's class going to be like? And what does it mean to be going from, a class in 9th grade to a class in 10th grade? Because those expectations change, and they're getting older. And so there's more and more that they're going to be expected to be able to handle in terms of pacing and content. So the program of study is, again, a really great reference for students for everyone who is looking at just course titles and wants a little bit more insight into what a class is. It's also really helpful if a student knows they want to take a certain class, knowing if there are prerequisites, co-requisites, or what it really takes to get up to that level. It's something that that I personally reference a lot with students. And so know that it exists, both the course request worksheet and the program of studies, like I said, will be emailed home, but they're also going to be available on my Milken, the resource board, the academic planning tile. So you can actually go on now and look at them from last year, because they're still up there, and kind of see what I'm talking about. And again, updated ones will be out soon. The last thing I'm going to show you is a four-year academic trajectory. So this is a worksheet that we build within the Office of College Counseling and Academic Planning. And so we'll look at the courses your students are taking in 9th grade. We will look at the courses they are recommended for in 10th and want to request. And then we'll fill in junior and senior year based on if they're taking the same trajectory. So it's not mapping out exactly what they will take, but it's just a educated guess where if they continue along the same path, this is what 11th and 12th grade could look like. We will email home this academic trajectory worksheet. So you will have it. You can look and see the courses that they requested for 10th grade, the courses they were recommended for, as well as notes that we take about their summer plans and just anything else that they should have on their radar. So it's a really nice kind of wrap up to what happened in the meetings that you can debrief. Some other things that we talk about with them in these meetings are ensuring that they have balance in their schedule, that they're not taking on too much too soon, that they potentially are, being pushed in appropriate ways without being overwhelmed. We always want students to improve from year to year, and if appropriate, increase rigor, which might be appropriate for some 10th graders, and some might just need a little bit more time to get in the groove of things. teachers make their recommendations just based on their academic area. And so it's on us to make sure that we look at the big picture and that students are taking every class in consideration when they're thinking about the load of 10th grade instead of just one class at a time. It is always our goal to help students, grow appropriately and push themselves appropriately. And the last thing we want to do is set a student up for failure. And so it's really important to listen to their teachers, trust their teachers, and also trust that we only have their best interests at heart. So that's kind of what we will talk to your students about in the 30-minute meetings. We will show them when we visit their advisors again, we will show them the course request worksheet, we will show them the program of studies, and then in the meeting, when they come with their prepared course request worksheet fully filled out and we have meaningful conversation, we will email home the trajectory worksheet so that you have a sense of the things that we talked about, and also some general planning for 11th and 12th grade. All right, I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Kierman to talk a little bit more about academics and just the philosophy that we come to this process with.
Hi, good evening. I'm Shelley Kierman. I am going to talk to you about the academic story. So basically, when a student, chooses classes at Milken and not that yet. Yeah. Okay. When a student chooses classes at Milken and chooses electives and decides which class, they're going to take up the honors, course that they've been approved for, or decide, how they're going to show themselves outside of the class year, maybe that also aligns with their academic interests. All of this every year and every class that they choose to take and every final grade that they get is ultimately building up to their academic story at Milken. And I'm going to end my piece at the end of this by showing you what that looks like in a transcript, because that kind of delineates what the academic story looks like on paper. So, when a senior is looking back, for example, at their 4 years of high school, you can see the kinds of classes they took as a 9th grader. You can see if they pushed themselves a little bit more as a 10th grader. Did they take on too much? Did they fall short in some areas? Did they pursue electives and try lots of different things? Did they hone in by 11th and 12th grade and decide to take certain classes, at the advanced levels that we offer? So there's lots of things that somebody can learn when you're looking at somebody's, 4-year story. And so that's sort of part of the big picture. We wanted you to understand the sort of end goal of all of this. And as we walk through it, this is all a work in progress. These are 9th graders. They're just figuring out high school. They have one quarter under their belt. So they don't have this all figured out yet. And that's part of why we have all these conversations. We want them to try new things. At Milken, we are blessed to have so many things to offer them. We have tracks within design and architecture and fashion. We have graphic design, we have performing arts, we have creative writing, we have business and entrepreneurship and economics, we have psychology courses, multiple types of psychology, we have advanced research, we have advanced math classes, advanced science classes that some kids, double up on as they move through their time in high school. Or the social sciences. We have advanced Jewish studies courses where kids can really pursue that at the highest level. So there's so much just within the curriculum at Milken, as well as the co-curricular stuff. And so we want them to try things. We want them to take advantage of things. We want them to be pursuing, areas that might be interesting to them. As a 9th grader, they had limited choice because they had to take health and personal fitness this year. They had to get their art requirement in. So for most of them, that's filling up their elective space. But by the time they get to 10th grade and those requirements are done and they might be getting their PE credit, some other way, they will have more room to try some new electives, yearbook, journalism, any of the other academic ones that I've mentioned. So as Sam said, and as you're looking at those documents, we want them to really consider. And if you're like, I don't know what positive psychology is, and maybe they'll read about it. And maybe that's something that they want to try. We want them to really take on things that align with their interests. they have to figure out their interests first before they can take things that align with them. So it's partly just figuring it out. It's all just sort of trial and error for them. And it's okay to take a class in 10th grade and realize that wasn't for me, and then switch gears for 11th grade. That's totally fine. We just want them to be experimenting and trying with different academic areas and figure out eventually, like, what are the areas where they feel really passionate about, where they find the most enjoyment learning at a higher level, and where they're good at, and they feel like that's a strength of theirs. We want them to challenge themselves, but they have to be able to meet the challenge. So this is a big part of what we do in terms of our academic advising. But as Sam said, the courses are all decided by the faculty. So the faculty are going to recommend them based on their performance, based on their engagement, based on their skill, their mastery of the material, their maturity, their interest in the subject. You know, in high school, we don't just give A's for effort, and we don't just put somebody in an honors class necessarily just because they have an A. An A in a college prep class might mean they're ready for honors. It doesn't always mean that, depending on the subject area. So they need to be showing their teacher through multiple ways in the classroom, and engaging with the teacher and going to Lishma if needed, or through their academic performance, most importantly, if that's an area where they want to push themselves, where they're ready to push themselves and they're ready to take on more, but we don't want them taking on more than they can handle. We see this every year where kids overdo it and they kind of want to push themselves into a course that is the teacher doesn't maybe initially recommend. And that can be really hurtful. That can hurt their grades, that can hurt their GPA, it's going to be part of their academic story at Milken. So that's one of the, for better or worse, that will be part of their academic story. So taking on challenges is good. It just has to be done thoughtfully and with our guidance and with their teachers' support. But we want them to challenge themselves, and we want them to push themselves. So we will help them find that balance. The other thing I just want to say is, as they do have 2 weeks at the beginning of the year to make those kinds of decisions about, if this class is truly not okay for them. But middle of the year, changes, are not really allowed or ideal. They're allowed, but they're not ideal. So that's something that we want to avoid, like a mid-year withdrawal of a class. We want to make sure that they're going to be recommended for a class and taking a class with their teacher's support, where they can handle the rigor and do well. The last thing you want to do is to, at the end of the day, show colleges that you can't handle the rigor, that you took a harder class and you didn't meet the challenge. So that would be showing the opposite of what they want to show, which is that they are ready for these higher level classes. So those are things that will help them think through. In terms of upwards trend and rigor, so an upwards trend, some kids are going to start 9th grade and hit the ground running and have a really strong start and just be consistent all year and be consistent every year. And that's going to be some kids. Other kids are going to have a slower start to 9th grade. It is a huge transition from middle school. And so they might have a slower start or a rough start, a bumpy start. And these kids had an unusual start on top of the normal challenges we see with 9th graders. They have a highly unusual start to high school. So I want to say 2 things about that. One, we want you to know that colleges are certainly going to be thoughtful and mindful about the fact that your kids started high school in the middle of this pandemic and that they're learning virtually, and that learning is not the same, and they don't have access to their teachers in the same way, and all of the factors that come into the difficulties of this year. Every kid in the world is impacted somehow by this pandemic. It's going to vary maybe from state to state and cities to city, but ultimately our students are evaluated within the context of Milken, within LA County, within what we're allowed to do, within what we are able to provide as a school. And so we've had virtual learning since day one. It's been a very, solid program that we've been able to continue our academics. But you should also know that there is definitely a place and a space down the road to help colleges understand any specific things that maybe have come up for your kid, your family, and academically that maybe have been like very impactful, that there will be places to sort of talk about that or explain those things. It doesn't like change grades necessarily, but context is really important. So just know that colleges will certainly know that and will certainly understand that so many things are being impacted this year. The other thing I was going to say about having a harder start is that, some kids have a slower start to ninth grade, but then they're going to improve and they're going to get the hang of high school and they're going to do better as second quarter comes around and then third quarter comes around. And then after ninth grade, they're going to have an entirely different perspective as they come back as 10th graders, whether that's on campus or not. They're going to have so much more experience as a high school student under their belt. And with that is maturity. So a lot of this is just being mature, and that's developmental, and that is going to hit every kid very differently. So as Ross said earlier, like we meet with a lot of juniors who sit with us and they say, I wish I would have done better in ninth grade. And hindsight's always 20/20. They say that and they wish they would have done better in ninth grade. Some of them probably could have done better. Some of them probably could have worked harder and probably could have put in the work and the effort and met with their teachers and studied and managed their time better. And other kids, like no matter how many times you bang it into their head, like they're only going to be able to do so much because developmentally and maturity wise, this is where they are and they're going to grow. And that's part of the growth story. Part of their academic story is how they're going to grow in high school and how they're going to develop and mature over their time. And by 11th and 12th grade, they maybe will hit their potential. And that growth is a good thing. We want them to grow. We want every year for them to get better. And that's what we mean by upwards trend, that every year they have a chance to do better and better and better. And then rigor refers to the actual coursework that they're in. So a college prep course curriculum, at Milken is very rigorous. And colleges know that. We have a very, very rigorous academic program where our kids are also taking an academic Jewish studies class on top of everything else. And so that's something that colleges are well aware of. And then when kids are taking also honors or AP classes eventually in 11th and 12th grade, that's where rigor is going to start to grow as they become upperclassmen. You should also just know, and I just want to say that it's totally common and for there to be kids who are for students to only be in college prep level classes, especially as ninth graders. We don't want families getting caught up in feeling like they need to have a certain number of honors or you have to have a certain number of APs. There is no college in the country that has a minimum requirement of honors or APs, and we're never going to advise kids based on that kind of philosophy. That's just not who we are as a school. So just know that wherever they are being placed and wherever they're, in their classes and doing well is probably where they belong. And that's where we want their confidence to grow from. And then the last thing I want to show you is the high school transcript. So I know you can't read it, and it's the purpose of this isn't really for you to see the fine print, but it's really just to see the big picture of what the document that we actually send to colleges. So this is an official transcript that has 9th, 10th, and 11th grades, final grades. We only submit final grades from June or the end of a first semester if it's a class that finishes in January. As you can see, it's sort of broken up by 9th grade, the courses they took, the grades they got, and then on the sidebar on the right, we have the GPAs that they got for each year. So for example, this student had in 9th grade a 3.58. In 10th grade, their final GPA was a 3.80, and 11th grade, their GPA was a 4.03. It's so hard to read. And overall, these 3 years, the purpose of me showing you this is to highlight that the GPA that they're going to eventually apply to college with is the average of these 3 years. So it's 9th, 10th, and 11th totally divided by 3. So just to show you that, like Ross said at the beginning, 9th grade counts, that this is an important year of growth. This is building the foundation of their learning. This is building the foundation of how well they're going to do in high school and the kinds of classes that they'll take down the road, and their study skills and their habits and all of these things. So every year gets increasingly important because they're going to, and more challenging because they're going to be in more challenging classes and they're going to get older. It's important for you to also have the perspective that, and I know I'm kind of saying the word college a lot without really talking about college, but colleges do admit the 18-year-old who's applying. They're not admitting this 14-year-old in ninth grade with these grades. They're going to be admitting the 18-year-old. So there is room for them to grow. There's room for them to improve, and each year to sort of achieve what they are hoping to achieve by the time that they graduate from Milken. You should also just know that as part of our job, we also make sure that kids are fulfilling all Milken graduation requirements. So everything that we put them in and everything that we keep track of is fulfilling Milken graduation requirements, and Milken's graduation requirements exceed the minimum basic requirements for any college. So graduating from Milken makes them eligible to apply to any college. So just know that kind of information as well. And that's it. I'll pass it on to Ms. Jackson.
Okay, thank you. Hello. All right, so I am going to be chatting about the extracurricular story, and similarly to the academic story, which we talk about with your students in our one-on-one meetings with them in the spring, we also will chat with them about what their extracurricular story is looking like. And I can imagine that right now in a pandemic, it maybe feels a little funky for them of like what life outside the classroom is like. Really, it's, what is life outside of the computer like these days? And it can be hard to find hobbies. So all to say, as Ms. Kierman alluded to earlier, colleges understand, down the road when kids are going to be applying to college, colleges are going to look back at ninth grade for these students and think to themselves, man, 2020, that was when this kid started high school. Okay, taking that in this context for their academics and also for the extracurricular aspect as well, and the potential limitations that might come from living in a pandemic and trying to play sports, trying to join clubs, trying to do service, and how that can really, in this pandemic, have some limitations in some ways, and also some opportunities to get really creative. So in terms of thinking through the extracurricular story, when we're meeting with these students, we want to start chatting with them about the things that they've been involved in throughout high school, both in and outside the classroom. And if they haven't gotten involved a lot yet, we'll chat with them about ways that they might be able to pursue the interests that they have. We really try to stress the message to students that 9th and 10th grade is the time to explore. It is 100% okay if they don't have all their interests figured out. They're 14 years old, I don't imagine that they have all of their interests figured out. And now is the time to take advantage of the many opportunities and resources that Milken offers, and for students to test the waters and get a good story from something that they tried and realized they really did not like, and how that led them to the thing that they did like. So 9th and 10th grade is all about exploration in the hopes that they do start to find something that is a great match for them in terms of activities, and they're able to then pursue it on a deeper level as high school continues. And I think about some of my students that I've worked with. I work with a senior right now named Kayla, who she was kind of curious about a club that we have at Milken called JSA, which is an organization that teaches civic education and leadership around politics and government. So she decided to test it out in 9th grade and ended up really loving it. Today, she's now the president of the organization at Milken, and also got involved with the regional level for all of Southern California, where she is, I believe her title is like Deputy Director of Debates. So she really took it to a big level in terms of this interest that she had. She tried it out. She didn't really know what to think of it, but she knew she kind of liked having debates and having conversations with people, and figured that it might be an interesting opportunity. And she really found something that she loves and is now kind of gearing up towards even potentially studying something similar in college. So I really think about, that came from her trying something new. And if she didn't, I'm sure along the way she found things that she also didn't like. And she has a great story from those opportunities as well. So now is the time for your students to be trying new things. I hope that they are. When we met with your students in their advisory visits, I know I definitely chatted with students about the club fair that we had recently. We had a great club fair, I think it was a month or so ago, and one of the best things that came out of it, in my opinion, is a Google Doc with all of the different clubs and organizations that are offered at Milken and that are student run, most of them. So this Google Doc, Ms. Kiesler put this together, and it's available either on the resource board, or if your student can't find it, they can always email us and we can pass it along, or they can email Ms. Kiesler. But it has a list of over 50 different clubs and organizations for so many different interests, and there's a student contact as well as a faculty contact for every single club, along with a description. So it's a great way for them to peruse that and just get an idea of some of the different opportunities that we already have going on at Milken for them to try out. In general, I think when it comes to thinking through the extracurricular story, it's about a student really kind of discovering what they like and being able to be reflective in why they choose to stick with something and dedicate their time to it. It's not about building a laundry list of activities to show off to a college down the road. It's really more for them to grow in their interests and figure out what lights them up. As they're starting to take on more responsibility, there might be opportunities for leadership opportunities within these organizations, and hopefully they're just able to find ways to spend their time and grow in their interests that are meaningful to them. I think above all, a list of activities is only as strong as a student's ability to reflect and articulate on why these things matter to them, why they decide to spend their time partaking in the activities they did, and how they impact people in the role that they had. I really think that the ability to reflect is huge when it comes to not just promoting yourself to a college in an application, but in really understanding why you do the things you do, and being able to speak to those opportunities in a way that you're able to speak to the growth that you have, and maybe where you had to really push yourself to navigate a new situation, and the opportunities for change that can come from that. Our colleague Gary Clark is the UCLA Director of Admission, and he always shares a quote with our students saying, if 3 years from now you don't get into your top choice college, you don't want to look back and ask, what did you do this all for? Hopefully you chose the classes you chose and the activities you chose because you really love them, and not just to show off to a college. So I really think that's important for students to keep that message in mind. And now that first semester is coming to an end for your student, if they haven't started to get involved in activities and they're wondering like what are ways that they can get involved, especially in this virtual world, here are some activities to consider. And I know that the font is kind of small. Let me make my screen a little bit bigger so I can actually see some of them that we have on here. But I think there really are so many different activities for a variety of interests, as Ms. Kierman was saying, even with the different tracks that we offer at Milken in terms of different academic courses. A lot of times students might even find activities that correlate with their academic interests as well, but you certainly don't have to. I think if a student is maybe curious about engineering down the road, then maybe they're trying robotics, or maybe by being involved in something like Milken Mentors or Wise Readers to Leaders, maybe they realize education and teaching is something that would really be a great match for them long term. Getting involved in something like JSA or mock trial might help a student realize that they are like made for a career in law, or maybe they realize like being a lawyer is just not going to be their jam. And so hopefully they are taking advantage of these different opportunities, trying something new, even if they're not sure what to make of it. And if they go to a club meeting and they really don't feel like it's their environment, they don't have to go back. But now really is the time to explore and figure out what's going to be a good match for them. Another great way to get involved with different your life beyond the classroom is really through service learning, which is a requirement at Milken. But there's so many different ways for students to get involved in service learning, even in this virtual world that we're living in. Ms. Ordauer actually was in contact with me recently about the My Milken Resources board and how the service learning tile has been updated on there for a lot of opportunities for service learning that can even be done in a safe way through the pandemic. So I definitely recommend encouraging your student to check that out and find an opportunity of a service organization that is of interest to them. Hopefully when they're doing service, it's not just for fulfilling the requirement, but for them to get a sense if this is something they could see themselves doing longer term. As you can see here on the side, the requirement for hours each year increases as students are progressing through high school. So my hope is that similarly with the academics and classes, the students are kind of testing the waters and exploring in 9th and 10th grade, so that by 11th and 12th grade, they're sticking with an organization and getting their service on a deeper level with an organization where maybe they are even able to take on leadership roles, or if anything, they figured out what's a good match for them. And now that they're doing 30 hours of service as a senior, that this is really an organization they feel really committed to. The other thing that we talk about with our students in these meetings in the spring, so far we are going to be talking about their academics for 10th grade. We talk about their extracurricular story. We chat with them about service learning and making sure that they're fulfilling the requirement and thinking through how they might progress in service learning. And the other thing that we chat about is what summer is going to look like. And this is in some ways seems like a funny conversation that we're going to talk about summer 2021. I had some meetings with juniors this week where here I am trying to like breach this conversation, and it feels a little odd in December in the middle of a global pandemic. I imagine with your students come this spring, things might feel a little bit more clear of what the summer brings for students. And really, I hope that students are finding ways to relax and pursue things that they really are curious about or interested in, and also know that, you know, right now in December, it's hard to know exactly what the summer will look like, but that typically we are always encouraging students to take advantage of different opportunities, whether it's going to camp or traveling or finding a way to get ahead on their service learning and find a volunteering or organization to get involved in through that. A lot of students will do Milken summer school classes so that they have more flexibility in their schedule the following year to maybe take on more electives that they're really interested in. So that's a great opportunity. We had a lot of students this past summer who really spent their summer in a really productive way by doing summer school. And now they're able to have a little bit more flexibility or take on more electives that are meaningful to them. So one thing that we do always show our students in these meetings is on our college counseling page for the resource, on the resource board, there's a college counseling button. And on that link, we have a long list of summer opportunities. You can't really see the full list here, or you can see the start of it to know what the page looks like when you get to the college counseling tab. But there is a long list of summer opportunities. A lot of them might be through college programs, pre-college programs, where you're maybe getting a taste of a college environment, a college class. And even in the online world, many colleges are still offering these programs. So that's something to think about. When it comes to thinking about how a student should spend their summer, there's really no silver bullet. I think the best way to think about it is, what does a student enjoy doing? If they're going to be spending, 2 months of the year doing this, and it's a break from school, hopefully it's something that they actually enjoy, whether educationally based or not. Hopefully it's going to be something that does feel rejuvenating to them in some way and allows them to take an interest they have and pursue it a bit more intensely when they have the time to do so, not being in school. One of my students last year, Oliver, he every year had an internship with a real estate company, and he did that every summer for a few weeks and really kind of progressed in his role with the real estate company. And then leading up to the summer before his senior year, he was like, I've at least learned from this real estate internship that I am curious about potentially working in the business field someday. But I've always kind of been in an office environment. I don't really ever interact with customers or really learn customer service skills. So he decided to get a job at Panda Express to, deal with customers firsthand and gain skills in that capacity. And I think if anything, it solidified, he doesn't hope for a future working at Panda Express long, for the rest of his life, but he's learned skills in kind of multiple different capacities. And he was able to really see the benefit from that. And he talked about it in a lot of his college essays. And I really think all to say, there is no right or wrong way that a student can go about their summer, as long as they're doing it from a place of reflection, intention, and hopefully finding authentic interest in depth in the things that they are pursuing. So all to say, this is what's coming ahead. We met with all of your students and their advisories last month. We will meet with them again in a couple months as well. And then I'm really looking forward that we get to meet with them one-on-one in the spring for their first high school academic planning meeting, which you all experienced with your student last year when they were 8th graders, but now that they are 9th graders, they will come alone to these meetings and navigate them with us as the young adults that they are. So in conclusion, I mean, you've heard about our overall philosophy and what is to come, but please know that we really love our jobs, and we are excited to get to know your students through this journey, and your kids are in good hands. I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Schreiber to pose any questions that have come in through the chat, and thank you.
Yeah, we have a couple that I wanted to save because I think it'll benefit everyone to hear. So first one was about PE. PE grades are counted in the GPA. Don't slack on PE. They do end up in that cumulative GPA. And a big one that I think we get on all sides of the desk is, generally speaking, which is better, a B+ in an honors or AP class, or an A in a college prep class. And the sassy answer is an A in an honors class. The real answer is, it really depends on your student. It really depends on if they're being pushed in a really thoughtful way in an honors or an AP class and they get a B+, we call that a win. There is nothing wrong with a B+ or a B. Like, we want students to be engaged. We want them to be learning. We want them to be pushing themselves. So if they're getting an A in a college prep course, but they're really not being pushed to their maximum potential, is it worth it? And so, you know, there isn't a straightforward answer, obviously, and that is why the conversations that we have with students are nuanced, because it varies from student to student. So it also might make sense for them to be pushing themselves in English and social sciences and not in math, and the complete opposite for another student. So I'm sorry to not give a perfect answer, but that is the reality, is we want students to be pushing themselves and not just phoning it in, but we also want to make sure that they're set up for success. Another question was about clubs that are active right now. Are clubs active right now? The answer is, so many of them, I feel like, are almost more active than they were before. The specific question was about speech and debate, but I think in general, clubs that were really active, that competed, that maybe traveled, have found really great ways to continue to be active, even if not in competition. And I also think that COVID has allowed a lot of students to find new and unique ways to get active and to start new clubs and to engage in ways that maybe they weren't comfortable before, and really serve communities that they're now aware need help, and they have the time to help them. You know, the best part is going to be, or the best way to know is going to be to reach out to Ms. Keisler or to look at that document, and your student should feel completely comfortable emailing the student leader of the club and asking, you know what, I missed you guys at the club fair, but I saw this. I'm wondering, you know, what are you guys up to right now? And would it be okay if I joined a meeting to just kind of see what it's about? Again, it is okay to try and to you know, decide something isn't for you, but you're not going to know if you don't show up to that first Zoom meeting, which I'm sure, you know, is equally as intimidating as it would be in person.
Ms. Schreiber, could I jump in for 1 sec?
Please.
We keep referencing this magical student club list. And as I keep hearing about it, and truly it was one of the greatest inventions since I've been at Milken, when we send out the recording of tonight's event, we will also include this link so that you have access to this really, really great curated list that you and your student can go over. You'll want to look out for an email from Zoya from our office, who sent you the information for tonight's event, and that will have that information. Go ahead, Sam. Thanks. that
was really those are the two big questions I got that I wasn't able to just answer in the chat, and that I think would really, everyone would benefit from hearing. You know, of course, once we meet with your students, oh, I got another one about service hour requirements this year. And do students have to meet them? The short answer is yes. The long answer is there are a lot of different ways that students can meet them. I think Ms. Kierman, you want to pop in now or something after? No, after, sorry. Okay. It's hard to manage the chat and talk at the same time, and be unmuted, which I learned early on. But yes, students do have to meet the service learning requirements. The email that Ms. Ordauer sent to us had a lot of information that's helpful in terms of meeting those requirements. That's also available on the resource board on the service learning tile. So there are things they can do to get 5 hours that, in my mind, take very little effort, but can go a long way. So obviously it's much more flexible, and not counting hours, but more counting effort that students are putting in to just try and get it done. They do need to report it on, I think it's called Mobile Serve, an app, which I know some of even my seniors, it's a little beyond them. And so you want to make sure that they're registered for that app or site and that they're able to input their hours. But that's also something that we talk to them about in the academic planning meetings. We asked them, I think Ms. Jackson said that, that we talked to them about summer extracurriculars and service learning. Hot tip, students can donate toys for the upcoming toy drive to meet their service learning requirements. So again, a lot of flexible ways. Thank you, Ms. Orloff, for popping in and helping me out there.
There's also a blood drive on Sunday. That would be another way for students to earn service hours. It begins at 9 o'clock. It's at the Guerin Fab Lab. And information about the blood drive and the toy drive were on the Milken Messenger that went out today.
And the app is called Treedom, which is a name I've never heard before, but I'm excited to learn about.
And fun fact, Treedom is a app created by a 2013 Milken graduate. So it's really cool to have him and his, company behind us and working with Miss Ordauer.
We actually have a lot of juniors who are doing internships through Treedom. So there you go. There's even more ways that you can get involved in, doing stuff from home. And I was just going to say something else that we talked to your kids about when we went into 9th grade advisories. We had seniors with us who also shared their experiences of what it was like to go through high school and just the advice that they had for them. So those would be good follow-up questions to ask too, how those conversations went. But something else, like Ross just mentioned, the Milken Messenger. Like the Milken Messenger is packed every week with so many things that are happening, with so many things that are going on, with so many things that they can be getting involved in. And while being home and everything is harder, intimidating, and you feel disconnected, like they've got to just sort of make the effort to read what's available and to try one thing, and for you to push them a little bit, but obviously you can't push them too much. It can't totally come from you or they won't really listen. But there are so many ample ways for them to see what's going on and to talk to older Milken kids in 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, what they're getting involved in. Normally our 9th graders come to campus in a carpool and they're with other kids and they just overhear what everybody else is doing and they overhear the meetings that they're going to and they see things all around campus. So without that connection, it's a good way for them to just sort of try to reach out to the 10th or 11th and 12th graders they know, or kids who have graduated, and say like, what are you doing at Milken? Like, what have you got involved in? What have you tried? And just sort of like gather information and just sort of learn what else is there, because it takes a long time to learn about Milken. We have a lot going on, so just want to give it time, but it'll all come.
These were all great questions, and I hope thank you to those who asked. I think it really benefited everyone to hear this, and also from the repeat Milken parents and Milken employees that helped me out. I really appreciate it, and it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. So if after your students meet with us, when we send those emails home, you can always reply to ask any questions, but hopefully what's to come and have all of the information that you need to make our meetings productive, and also feel like what the expectations are of your kids and how we work to support them throughout their 4 years at Milken.
So thank you guys so much for being with us. We stuck under an hour, which was our goal. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Have a wonderful Hanukkah, and we will be in touch tomorrow with a follow-up to tonight's event. Thank you so much.
Thanks.